So if you're not familiar with Aero Systems Integration, I wanted to put a quick slide up that addresses our Microsoft capabilities and our background in this field. So Aero Systems Integration, a part of Aero Electronics, is a Microsoft Gold Communications partner and a cloud deployment partner. What that really just means is we cover the different products and applications that you see here on the screen, everything from Lync, Exchange, and SharePoint running on-premise to Office 365 to Windows Azure workloads. So I've got engineers on staff familiar with everything under the sun here, and we help our customers with issues and problems and projects related to these different product lines. So the new addition to this product line is now Skype for Business. And the information I'm going to share with you today assumes that you're at least familiar with Lync in some way, shape, or form, be it Lync 2010, Lync 2013, or Lync Online. I'm not going to do an overview of what Lync is or what Skype for Business is. What I am going to try to do is give you some updated information about what's coming with Skype for Business, maybe some dates, some information about upgrades, what does this mean for my PBX interop story, what are my interop options, and all of the new features that are potentially coming with this. Now, I know some of you were probably invited by Sean Olson, who is actually my boss, and he was pretty active in getting people to join this session, and he wanted to join and co-present this with me, but unfortunately he's in flight, so he wanted to pass along his condolences that he wasn't able to join it. So if he asked you if I mentioned that, tell him that I did. So the agenda that I want to cover today, and this is by no means all-encompassing of what's happening with Skype for Business. This is just the bulk of the information that I wanted to present to our customers and to our partners about what's coming. I could easily do 3 or 4 days on all the technical nuances of Skype for Business, but for the sake of time, I picked a couple of things that I think are important to know and things that there might be questions on. It's important to note here that Aero Systems Integration, along with a few other global partners from Microsoft, have been selected by Microsoft as elite partners for Skype for Business. And what this means is, well, me personally, I've been given access to Skype for Business early on, including hands-on access to the servers as of several weeks ago, spending about a week at Redmond Microsoft and getting into the nitty-gritty on what's happening here so that we're ready for this when this drops. And as such, we're ready for launch. So I wanted to talk about the new desktop clients, the new mobile clients, a new feature in Skype for Business called Call Via Work, which I think is going to be one of the hottest topics that's going to come out of this, especially as it relates to PBX Interop and Avaya customers, Nortel customers, Cisco customers, Genband customers, talking about how they want to integrate. Call Via Work is going to be one of those features that's easy to deploy, and I want to go into it. I also want to hit the traditional PBX integration options because those haven't really changed, but I want to at least revisit them. The video interoperability server, or Viz server, is something I want to talk about because there's going to be a bit of confusion around it, I think. So I want to talk just a bit about video interop, even though video is a topic for its own webinar. And then I want to hit the upgrade paths, and hey, if I've got Lync 2010 today, how do I get to Skype for Business? If I've got OCS 2007 R2, am I screwed? And if I'm using Office 365, what does this mean for me in relation to the features that I'm describing today and all of that? So with that, I want to dive right into the new clients in Skype for Business. As part of Skype for Business, there are new desktop clients coming. There's new mobile clients coming. And I'm sure there's going to be a question on Mac. What's happening with the Mac client? I'll address the Mac client question at the end because it's not an answer everybody's going to be too thrilled with on the onset. But first and foremost, the new desktop client. So this is the new Skype for Business client running in production. Sorry about that. This is the new Skype for Business client actually running in production. So I'm actually running it live. Hey, let me pull it over so I can prove that to you. Look at that. I can put that right over the top of it. And boom, that's the new Skype for Business client. So the new Skype for Business client is running on Windows. You can see they've pulled in a lot of the UI and feature sets from the traditional Skype consumer client. It's important to note this is not the Skype consumer client. Those are going to be separate. I believe they're going to call it Skype Classic or Skype for Consumer, and that what you've known as Lync is going to be called Skype for Business. With this new UI design, they've tried to make it easier for users in terms of usability and instantiating instant messaging, calls, and sharing applications like file sharing and desktop sharing. One of the great features of Skype for Business is going to be the ability to search the Skype directory. Now, the Skype directory is arguably one of the best acquisitions that Microsoft made, right? Because if you look at the numbers on Skype, it's about 300 million plus user accounts across the globe. And what a great Rolodex to have. And to have that be publicly available from Skype for Business and the ability to search Skype users out in the world and connect with them is very, very powerful. And with that forthcoming is going to be video interop between your Skype for Business desktop client and traditional Skype consumer clients. Whether it be Skype running on somebody's Xbox One in their living room or Skype running on an iPad or on a smartphone, you'll be able to use your Skype for Business or Lync client essentially to communicate with those users. Some new features like a call monitor, which I'll talk about, the call via work feature, which is coming, Rate My Call, which gives users the ability to provide feedback to administrators about call quality, and hey, Skype emoticons. That sounds a little, kind of jokey about, hey, we're going to put emoticons in Skype for Business. It just shows that Microsoft is trying to align the user experience more closely with what people are already familiar with within Skype. So within the Streamlined Controls, I wanted to walk through how this looks and how this might be different from Lync to Skype for Business. So here is a live scenario that I did where I took screenshots where I send an instant message to Jonathan's side saying, hey, Jonathan, you got a second? And he says, yeah, I thought you were out of town, but go ahead. Previously in the Lync client, if you wanted to do video preview, meaning I want to fire up my video so I can see what I look like before I send it off, you have to hover over the video icon, and that's what would instantiate the video preview. So now you actually click on that video icon, and to start video you click again. So it's no longer a hover and click methodology. It's essentially 2 clicks, but it makes it easier. I mean, the hovering was kind of buggy. If you had 2 monitors or multiple monitors, it might not work great. So having that video preview still in there but have it easier to use is great. Once you want to instantiate the call, you can see the user experience is more closely aligned with Skype for Business. The buttons with Skype, the buttons are more Skype-like. Some of those feature buttons have been brought to the foreground. So here you can see the call is being instantiated, and now I'm in a live video call with Jonathan. Previously, some of these different options, which I'll step through here, like now I can instantiate my recordings, and I can change my font settings, and I can collapse the call from video to audio. That's all put together into one, options button on the far right. If I want to talk about the different call control buttons, those have been made easier to find as well. Some of the feedback that Microsoft received about, for instance, the transfer button, is that the transfer button was kind of hidden behind 2 or 3 different clicks depending on how you got there. Now it's all under the call control button. You can see I've got the ability to hold the call. I can switch devices on the fly, which has always been very powerful. So if I want to switch from my headset to, say, a speakerphone, I do that on the fly. And hey, now I've got a volume rocker built into the client, which is nice. The call monitor is a new feature, and this harkens back to the original Skype client, which is that if I'm using Lync or Skype for Business on my desktop for audio, and I've got multiple screens going, and I've got a browser over here and my email over there, it's going to be easy to lose that conversation window and to have to go back to your taskbar, go find it, and pull it back up. Well, Call Monitor is a way of putting that always on top functionality without being intrusive. So you can see here I've got a live call, it's active. I've got the ability to mute myself. I can see the mute button to make sure that I'm muted. If I want to bring the call back, I just double click, and it brings the conversation back to the foreground. If, for instance, I've got a video call going and you're familiar with the Lync client, I've got a gallery view of video, the call monitor will still show video for that call. It'll show active speaker. It actually shows active speaker for audio calls as well. So having an always-on top UI of being able to see who's talking, see the video stream of the active speaker, and having sub-call controls available to me is going to be really nice. The Rate My Call feature is going to be a new feature for the enterprise. This wasn't available previously in Lync 2013, but administrators will have the ability to prompt their users to give feedback. So let's say I'm using Skype for Business to place an audio call, maybe out to the PSTN. The administrator can say, hey, I want you to poll this set of users at random intervals to give me a 1 to 5 star, how good was the call quality, were there any issues, and maybe some freehand text where you can provide some feedback. And this isn't a smoke and mirrors thing. This is actually going to get fed into the call quality database so that administrators can pull out of it meaningful data prompted from the end user. This isn't to say that it's not a replacement for QoS and QoE experience solutions, but it is a way of giving power to the end users to say, hey, I had an issue, I want to raise my hand, instead of being the burden being entire on the administration. Another new feature for the Skype for Business client, which I think is great, is this first run experience. So let's say you've got Lync 2013 today, and I'm pushing the Skype for Business desktop client to all my end users. Well, the first question is usually, okay, now what do I do for training? How do I train my end users? And training is something that I do personally and my team does as well, of end user training, administrative knowledge transfers, and train the trainer, and giving them the tools they need to effectively support their users. However, built into the Skype client is going to be this native first run experience, a lot like the Skype consumer client, meaning I fire it up and it takes me through a quick tutorial of, hey, this is the new client, this is where IM is, this is where audio and video calls are, and you can skip through it and just close it out if you want. But for some end users, this might be powerful. It's no cost and low effort to push this out. So every user would have the ability to have some first run training without having to be emailed a PDF of a training slick. So that's some of the new things coming out for the desktop client. I'll leave you with this on the desktop clients. If you're installing Skype for Business Server or even using Skype for Business Online, the Lync 2013 and I believe Lync 2010 clients will both be backwards compatible with this solution. You won't get all of the features, but you'll be able to run it. So it's not like you're going to push the Skype for Business server and then overnight everybody's got to use the new desktop client. You could use the old stuff, you're just not going to get the new experience. And for the OCS 2007 R2, there's going to be ways to make that work, but it's not going to be recommended. OCS 2007 R2 is going to be essentially pushed off the dock. Microsoft follows an N-2 methodology, so if N is Skype for Business, -2 is Lync 2010. So OCS 2007 R2 is no more. Moving on to the mobile clients, this is part of Satya Nadella's Cloud First, Mobile First methodology. With that, the mobile clients are being redesigned and rebuilt from scratch to, again, more closely align with the Skype for Business look and feel. So we're still going to be supporting Windows Phone devices, Android devices, and iOS devices. No BlackBerry support, so don't even ask about that. But more refined lobby controls for presenters are coming. There's often issues where if I'm leading a meeting and I'm trying to do that from my mobile device, I can't see the lobby and therefore I can't admit people into the meeting. And sometimes that leaves users stuck in limbo. Having those lobby controls as part of the smartphone, which you can see on the right there, I've got the ability to admit users into the meeting or not. Having that up my controls is going to be very powerful. With the release of Office for iPad, we're now going to be supporting presenting documents, presenting PowerPoints from a Retina display iPad as well. So previously with Lync meetings, you pretty much had to be on a desktop client or a web app version to present content. and then you could join from your mobile device. Well, now from an iPad, since you've got Office on there, you've got access to your docs, you should be able to present that content, right? So the new Skype for Business mobile client for iPad is going to be able to do that. And one of the biggest improvements, I think, is going to be the server-side conversation history. So previously with Lync 2013 and Lync 2010, your conversation history was respective to the client on which you were joining or using. So if I'm on my mobile device, I'm at the airport, and somebody sends me an IM, that IM is going to be received by my mobile device, and I have to accept it before timeout. And if I do, that conversation history does not show up on the desktop client. The conversation history follows the device that you use, and that's being improved upon in the server-side conversation history. So here's some of those issues that are going to be resolved by this. So let's take that example again. I'm at the airport, I'm on my smartphone, and Sean Olson sends me an instant message, "Hey Patrick," hits enter. Well, that IM is going to traverse across all the way to my smartphone, but until I go into my phone, unlock it, enter my code, and hit that pop-up that says I've got a new IM, Sean's going to see that spinning donut that says, "Hey, we're trying to find him." If I don't accept it in time, let's say my phone's in my backpack and I'm going through security, and I don't get to my phone for 5 or 10 minutes, Sean's going to might get an error that says, we couldn't find Patrick, and then I've got no record of that because that toast pop-up on my smartphone expired and I didn't get to it in time. So having that server-side conversation history allows us to automatically accept incoming IMs and keep them in a central repository. Building this out proved to be somewhat of a challenge, I think, for Microsoft because the Lync team and the Skype for Business team have historically not been store and forward type of guys. That's been really an Exchange feature. So I think there's been some collaboration between the Exchange group and the Skype for Business group on how to make this work. So with that, on the server side, we're going to have full, rich conversation history as part of the server. And here's some big diagram on how that store and forward functionality works. It's important to note that this is not a new server role by any means. This is going to be a feature built in on the front end. This is just going to be how IM works in Skype for Business. So it is going to keep a record of all successful calls, all missed calls, outbound, inbound, PSTN calls, and all of your IM and chat history. So I think that's going to be a great improvement. An improvement that's happening on the server side, but that's going to improve the mobile user experience. So that's about it for the client. I'm going to move into the call via work feature and some of the new voice stuff that's happening here. First, I want to hit remote call control because this has been a historically well-used feature by OCS, LCS, and in some cases Lync. Remote call control, if you're an Avaya user, is something that was serviced by an Avaya AES. If you were a Nortel user, it was a Nortel MCM that did this. The point is, RCC was a protocol-based way of remote controlling a PBX phone. So I pull up my Skype client, I type in a number, and I hit enter. That number goes to my AES, if you're an Avaya user, to my desk phone, pick up the desk phone pulses out those digits, and now I've got remote control of that phone. If you peel back the layers of software and code behind RCC, and you look at it even in Skype for Business, because it's still actually in there, that software hasn't really changed in nearly a decade. There hasn't been a lot of investment in updating it. There hasn't been a lot of interop testing between different PBX manufacturers in this. It's kind of been a fire and forget type of click-to-call feature functionality. With that said, RCC is being totally deprecated in Skype for Business. And what that means is the Skype for Business client is not going to be able to do RCC. If you've got a Lync 2010 client or a 2013 client, that client software can still understand RCC, but the server is not going to support it. So with that in mind, I've been recommending that we talk about either enterprise voice or maybe some other integration strategy to get the functionality that we want. But I think that RCC is going to be replaced and more widely adopted by a feature coming called Call Via Work. So Call Via Work is a new feature in Skype for Business that's going to allow Skype for Business users to place calls using their PBX phone. Sounds just like RCC, right? The difference here is that Call Via Work is not going to need that intermediary TR87 gateway. So it's not going to need an additional product with a whole bunch of licensing on it and weird config. It is actually just fire and forget Call Via Work functionality. So what this means is I pull up my Skype client, I type in a PSTN number, and I hit enter. The Skype for Business server is going to call the PBX and call my desk phone. My desk phone is going to ring, I'm going to pick it up, and once I do, Skype's going to say, okay, I've got Patrick on the line, let me call the number that he actually wanted to call, and dial that out. So Skype is actually going to call my desk phone, and then it's going to tell the PBX, hey, call that number and bridge these two together. If you've used any mobile, either via 1X Mobile or any of those mobility functions that do mobile callback, it's very similar to that. The difference here is that this is going to be native within the Skype for Business client. So when I go through that call flow, my presence is going to say in a call because I've used Skype to make that call. As you'd probably imagine, if you're somewhat technical on the PBX side, you'd guess that since I'm calling my PBX phone, all of that mid-range call control is incumbent on the phone to handle. So Skype for Business isn't going to do hold, conference, transfer, or any of that. I'm really just going to call the desk phone and then wring my hands and say, you guys have got it from here. So what that call flow looks like is this. So again, let's say I'm dialing 866-822-8400 from my Skype client. Type that in, hit enter, that goes to my Skype server and says, hey, Patrick at station 1127 is trying to call this toll-free number. We call the PBX and see if I can get his phone on the line. Step 2, Skype server calls the PBX. Step 3, PBX calls my desk phone. So on my desk, it's going to ring. It's going to look like it's coming from myself. I'm going to pick up the phone set, and it's going to go back to the Skype pool and say, hey, Patrick's on the phone. Let's place that outbound call. Skype server then calls the PBX again and says, hey, dial 866-822-8400 on behalf of Patrick and connect them. And my presence is reflected as being in a call, and I'm using my desk phone to place a call out to the PSTN. So in my mind, this is a great way of making the Skype for Business client stickier with the end user base. I mean, a lot of customers and enterprises are using Lync today for IM and presence, maybe some collaboration. But this is a way of retaining that PBX and that functionality and that desk phone and keeping your voicemail where it is while being able to use Skype for Business and that client throughout your day more efficiently and making it a part of your workflow. So that was an outbound scenario. Let's look at inbound. So there really is no inbound scenario. Call via work is an outbound feature. So for inbound, our features are still the same. I can still do some SIM ringing, and I could do some different things to maybe get the call to my Skype for Business client, but call via work is not inbound. And this functionality is designed to work with any egress PSTN. So any PSTN that can call, or any PBX that can call the PSTN, we should be able to work with. The complexity on the dial plan just means that since Skype is actually placing SIP calls to the PBX, we just have to make sure that digits that are sent and dial plans that are being used are understood. And honestly, there's not a lot of technical interop documentation around call via work, but that is forthcoming. So for an end user, this is what it looks like on your client. I'm able to come in here as an end user and specify I want to use my desk phone for outbound calls. So I can control this as an end user to say it's on or it's off. And there's some additional considerations here, right? So since this is a fire and forget outbound calling feature, it's point-to-point only. So let's say I place an outbound call to Sean Olson's cell phone, and then somebody says, hey, can you bridge me onto that call? And I want to use the native Skype for Business way of dragging and dropping users into a conversation. I can't do that. This is strictly fire and forget point-to-point. So no video, no multi-party, just PSTN outbound. So that's it for call via work. I wanted to highlight the response group updates only because it is a significant update. So response groups in Skype for Business are what a traditional PBX might call an agent hunt group or a skill or vector VDN. So our agent group size has been doubled, so we can have up to 800 agent groups, up to 2,400 agents in total, and up to 400 IVR hunt groups. So just wanted to highlight that because it is a significant change. So our PBX integration options more or less remain the same as they've always been. So I have the options to keep my PBX in place and do nothing with it, connect to my PBX, which is what I'd want to do for call via work, or potentially migrate everything to Skype for Business, which I do have some customers that have elected to do. We're going to shut down our old legacy big iron and use this for my enterprise dial tone. If I'm going to talk about retaining the PBX, I'm talking about having two separate islands. I've got my traditional PBX island with my phone sets, my voicemail, and my dial tone. And then on another island, I've got Skype for Business, which I can leverage for IM&P and some collaboration, but there's not going to be any sort of connectivity between the PBX and Skype. You can still do that, right? And this means that Skype can either be on-premise, in the cloud entirely, or in a hybrid deployment. So Skype for Business Hybrid is still there, just like Lync Online was still there. I don't have a split workload yet. I don't even know if that's forthcoming. So hybrid just means that some users are on-prem, some users are in the cloud. When it comes to connecting with the PBX, that means I'm keeping my traditional PBX there, but I'm going to build a bridge between these two islands. So I'm going to have some SIP trunking and maybe a gateway or some sort of SIP connection between my PBX and Skype for Business. And this opens up the world to me in terms of integration. I can now leverage that call via work functionality because I've got that SIP connectivity. I could potentially look at using enterprise voice for my dial tone, piggybacking off of the PBX connection, which is what I do. Or better yet, it enables me to use PSTN dial-in for my Skype for Business meetings. So using Lync or Skype for Business running on-prem for conferencing and giving it that PSTN access in is a great way of realizing some return on investment because I'm bringing that conferencing workload on-prem and in-house as opposed to maybe paying somebody else to do that somewhere else. So connecting with the PBX is what I see a lot of customers doing, for the most part, most customers doing, depending on the feature set they're looking for. And then migrating the PBX, some see this as drastic, others see it as the way of the future. I've got this legacy big iron PBX somewhere in the basement with a bunch of air filters and about 10 racks worth of old cabinetry. What's it going to take for me to shut that thing down and migrate entirely to this solution? Totally doable. So migrating to the PBX is something that migrating the PBX to Skype for Business is something that I've done for my customers quite a bit over the last few years. It does take some planning. It does take some additional gateways and SBCs for that PSTN connectivity, but it allows me to leverage Skype for Business for my enterprise voice needs, exchange unified messaging for my voicemail either on-prem or in the cloud, and then I can use either a Skype qualified headset or phone and eventually sunset that PBX and get users off of it. So there's actually two new server roles with Skype for Business. One of them is actually called it's like a call quality dashboard server or CQD. Nothing too new or sexy there except that it is a new server. You get a native call quality monitor application. But I think the more interesting new server role is going to be the video interop server, or VIS. And I've only got one slide on this because, well, there's not a ton out there about how this is going to work. Microsoft's been pretty tight-lipped. So the new VIS server is a new server role. And the way that it's being explained is hey, this is like a mediation server for video. So a mediation server is what Lync traditionally used for audio interop. VIS is going to be a mediation server for video. Specifically, I know it's being tested on, it's like 10 different Cisco VTC endpoints. So the VIS server is an application that's opening up H.264 SVC video to non-Skype for Business applications. That doesn't mean that I can just point any H.264 or video endpoint to that server and be good to go. It also doesn't mean it's the cleanest interop ever, right? If I've got a Cisco environment or a Tandberg environment with MCUs and some Polycom stuff over here, the video interop server is not a magic bullet that makes everything play well together. It's meant to be able to pull in some of these, say, VTC endpoints into a Skype for Business meeting. It is not the opposite of, I'm going to use my Skype for Business client to join a Cisco VTC or an MCU. It's meant to give you a path into Skype for Business. So it does talk H.264 SVC, meaning if I've got a video endpoint that doesn't, because it's doing H.323 or heaven forbid ISDN, that's going to be a problem. This is going to be designed for latest and greatest SIP H.264 SVC video. And this is only going to give you content sharing, or only video, I should say. It is not going to give you that rich content sharing. So if you've seen a Lync meeting where I'm sharing PowerPoints and I'm whiteboarding and I'm doing instant messaging and, oh, and I've got video, Viz is just going to be interoping that video piece. So there's not going to be any screen share, PowerPoint share, or anything like that. But it is going to be a new, easier way of doing video interop, which has been traditionally and historically very difficult to do with Lync. So now on to upgrade paths, because a lot of enterprises are either running Lync 2010 or Lync 2013 or Lync Online. So for those customers, how am I going to get to Skype for Business? What's the easiest way? So as I said, OCS 2007 R2 has been voted off the island. It's done. If you're still on it, get to a version of Lync as soon as you can. So if you're a Lync 2013 shop today and it's running on-premise, you can actually do what's called now an in-place upgrade to Skype for Business. This is a new feature from Skype for Business of being able to take the existing server software, server hardware that I've got, and doing an in-place upgrade without having to build out a new environment next to it. You can think of it like a cumulative update or a service pack. It is service affecting, so it does take a pool down, and there are ways of doing a live update that doesn't impact end users. However, generally speaking, an in-place upgrade from Lync 2013 to Skype for Business will bring that pool down, but there are ways around that. That doesn't mean that you can't do a traditional side-by-side migration. You still can, but for 2013 customers, you could and you probably should do an in-place upgrade. If today you're running Lync 2010 and Lync 2010 exclusively, you have to do a migration from 2010 to Skype for Business, meaning I've got to build an environment next to it and then migrate users to the new environment and then sunset the Lync 2010 environment. That's the only way of doing it apart from, hey, unless you're doing some sort of coexistence today. I've got Lync 2010 and I've started an upgrade to 2013 or I'm going to very shortly. There's absolutely no reason not to do that. You should still do the upgrade to 2013. Lync and Skype for Business does not support tri-existence. It does support coexistence. You can have two versions running side by side, but not three. So if you're 2010 today and either already in process of going to 2013 or you're going to very soon, keep doing that. There's no reason not to. In fact, once you're at 2013, you have more upgrade options available. A new feature for installation of Skype for Business is called Smart Setup. Smart Setup is a new way of doing installation packages for Skype for Business. So previously, if you were installing Lync 2013, you'd get an RTM package that was built, initially in 2013. You would install that on a server, and then you've got a couple of hours of cumulative updates, service packs, and patches. Smart Setup is a way of building that installation package where it actually pulls Microsoft updates and pulls down the latest and greatest CUs, patches, and service packs. So when you go to actually do the installation, it'll have the latest and greatest at time of install. This does require that the server that you're installing this on is able to see the internet and able to see Microsoft updates. So if it's not, because of policy or whatever reason, you can still do it the old-fashioned way. But if the server can see the internet, it makes installation that much more easy, because I can actually pull those updates down and save myself a full day's worth of work. So I promised I'd talk about Office 365, and for Office 365 users, Skype for Business is going to come pretty much automatically. I believe the current GA date for Office 365 Skype for Business, I think, is April 15th. It might be sooner, it might be earlier, but it's within the month. And for those customers, I'm talking about a lot of voice stuff and call via work. And call via work and the different voice features do not work in Skype for Business Online. You have to have an on-prem component. And to go deeper into that, let me look at an Office 365 E4 entitlement. And if you've got an E3 entitlement, some of this might apply as well, but for this I'm going to really focus on E4. So you've got E4, and you've got all these different workloads. You've got email, you've got calendar, you've got mobility, you've got potentially unified messaging in the cloud as well. You've got meetings, you've got team workspaces. You can see there, though, you've also got enterprise voice. So with an E4 entitlement, you get the entitlements to do dial tone with Skype for Business or Lync. But looking at that asterisk next to it, it says, hey, when you do this, you need to bring it on-prem. So even though you've got a cloud entitlement to E4, and you've got all this different workload in the cloud, from SharePoint to Exchange to Lync today, if you want to do anything with dial tone, they pretty much tell you up front, you've got to deploy this on-prem. And what that might look like is something like this. So, okay, now I'm getting in over my head, right? I got an enterprise agreement for E4. I put all my workload in the cloud, so I didn't have to do all this. I didn't want to build a Lync server and an Edge server and a reverse proxy and manage a DMZ and do a schema update with an Active Directory and deploy an Office Web App server and, get all this working within a specific time frame, right? So while this can be somewhat cumbersome, this is what you have to do to take advantage of some of those dial tone features if you're an Office 365 customer. Or I can deploy a single box that'll do everything. So I can't get around the fact that I need to be on-prem to do voice interop, but I can make your life easier by deploying an appliance that right now scales up to 1,000 concurrent users, but will soon be nearly unlimited. This application allows me to integrate to a PBX, integrate to a PSTN, keep my workload in Office 365 for Exchange and for SharePoint and for Azure and for Active Directory Federation services and administration, maybe even AD Premium. I just need this box on-prem in order to do some dial tone stuff and some of that cool stuff that I just described, like call via work. So VoiceEnable is an application that Aero Systems Integration has put together that leverages an on-premise solution to enable some of those cloud entitlements that you've got. To go into a bit more detail on the box, this is what it looks like for the fellow nerds out there. It is a Server 2012 chassis. It's running Hyper-V, and I've got some VMs on there that are going to be giving me some of that workload. Built in is a TDM gateway so that I can plug in some T1 PRIs if I need to. It's also got a session border controller built in so that I can do some SIP trunking. And the best part is this is all qualified and vetted with Microsoft. So this is sailing on the sea of supportability. And last but not least, if this were a solution that were to pique anybody's interest, I think it's important to note that every installation of this comes with the application, the implementation support, the gateway. It comes with 24/7 access to training materials. And the administrative knowledge transfer that everybody wants to have of, hey, I want to be able to administer this thing on my own. How do I do that? So that's about it for the show. In summary, there's new desktop clients coming, new mobile clients. There's new Mac clients coming out, but I don't have a whole lot of detail about those. But truly in the Skype for Business update, the most pervasive update that people are going to see is going to be the UI and the client experience. The call via work feature, I think, is going to be a great way to integrate to a PBX and give users that pervasive experience of using Skype for Business on their desktop more while leveraging the PBX investment we've got. Beyond that, we still have quite a few PBX integration options. The video interop server is going to make our video lives maybe a bit easier, but again, as of now, it's strictly for Cisco VTCs. There's going to be more interop testing being done there. I just know that when they want to go to market, they want to at least be able to have check marks next to these 10 different VTC endpoints. Touched a bit on upgrade paths of what this looks like in terms of if you've got Lync today, what are you going to do? And if you're an Office 365 customer, what does all this mean for you? Well, hey, you guys are the greatest. I appreciate you joining. I even put a little thank you slide in there to say just that. I'll tell you what, my email address is up there. If you want to email me directly, I'm happy to answer any questions or maybe have a conversation. I recognize some of the names on the questions list, so you guys are more than happy to answer your question. Any new faces, any new names, happy to talk to you as well. If we need to set up a call with yourself and your team, I can do that. Take advantage of it. Write down the email address and